Our next speaker is Ms. Leesa Carter, the Executive Director for the Captain Planet Foundation. Most recently, Leesa served as the Executive Director for the U.S. Green Building Council Georgia chapter, where her primary responsibility was growing the chapter's role as a leading educator and advocate for sustainable communities, green jobs, and green building. Under her leadership, USGBC Georgia grew to 5 active branches in Athens, Atlanta, Augusta, Macon, and Savannah, and launched the High Performance Healthy Schools program in partnership with the Office of the Lieutenant Governor and other partners. Leesa's other experiences include serving as the National Director of Field Marketing for Wild Oats Markets, a $1 billion natural and organic retailer that was bought by Whole Foods in 2007, and as an independent grant writing consultant for nonprofit organizations. Carter also worked extensively with Actors Express in Atlanta, served on selection committees for the Atlanta Arts Festival and Bureau of Cultural Affairs, and worked on production and special events, the Atlanta Committee for the Olympic Games. She currently serves on the steering committees for Atlanta Recycles with will.i.am's EcoCycle project with Coca-Cola, Turner Foundation's Green Schools Roundtable, Kids versus Global Warming, and the I Matter campaign, and on the advisory board for This America Land on PBS. She recently graduated from the 2012 class at the Institute for Georgia Environmental Leadership. Please welcome Ms. Leesa Carter.
My mother says nobody could ever have created a pathway in their career that I created on purpose. And it's true. Well, it's really wonderful to be here today. And I thank you. I know I'm just awash with power because I'm all that stands between you and lunch. So I'm going to be very brief. I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about what Captain Planet Foundation does and really invite you to become involved with us. We are in the business of helping to develop and train and educate the next generation of eco-visionaries and global environmental change makers. So the work that you guys are doing on the front lines today, we're help building that next generation to come behind. The foundation has been around for over 2 decades, predominantly investing in schools and nonprofits by way of nature centers, after-school programs, and other NGOs that provide children and youth with the hands-on environmental experiences that allow them to really develop the skills to become the next policy makers, the next group of corporate leadership, so that they can manage all of that through the lens of environmental knowledge. And so when you look at science, technology, engineering, and math, and this emphasis on those activities as well, these investments in the kids really help them with hands-on environmental activities that put that learning in a context of the environment, if that makes sense. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of the types of projects that we invest in that help kids to understand these things. So one is a program that's been out in the San Juan Islands, and it was a group of science learners in the 8th grade who had heard about a gentleman named Paul Stamets in Tacoma, who had been, he's one of the world's preeminent mycologists, mushroom experts, and he had been testing remediation, the capacity for mushrooms to remediate soil, and had found that actually oyster mushrooms do a really great job of remediating oil. Well, the students were trying to figure out how can they solve an issue that's been impacting the San Juan Islands. So if you're not familiar with the San Juan Islands, they're a chain of 7 islands off of the coast of Seattle, and you have to drive across one, get on a ferry, take the ferry to the next one, drive across on your way out, right? And they become increasingly popular as ecotourism destinations. So that's great, right? Everybody's going out to see the orcas, all these beautiful environments, but the increase in vehicle traffic has caused a lot of oil to then go onto the roads, and all of those roads are really close to the shorelines, and so the rain comes, it's the Pacific Northwest, and all that rain goes into the Puget Sound, and it was causing a lot of issues in these very pristine environments. And so they had decided to test further the capacity for the oyster mushrooms to remediate the soil. And so they began to grow different oyster mushrooms on different mediums of sort of oil-soaked mediums in petri dishes. And the ones that did the best, they would they would replicate and they would make sure that they use their spores for the next. So they came up with these super uber oil sucking mushrooms. And then they inoculated bales of hay and put them out in the areas where the runoff was happening to stop that from going into the water. So a really great solution based in the capacity for the earth to heal itself, but with really sound citizen science behind it. So I think we can all agree that that's a really excellent project and something that we would like to see replicated in other areas that have that type of opportunity. And the difference between their science teachers being able to engage them in that project was $2,500. So they could have either learned science out of a book, or they could have done this really amazing project for $2,500. And that's where Captain Planet comes in. It's this really critical gap funding that helps them actualize and learn about the world in a really dynamic and interesting way, but with really significant outcomes for the environment and also for their own knowledge and understanding. So then we go across the globe over to the Philippines to another one of our grantees. It's the Rehoboth Children's Home. They're an orphanage, and they are out on some land that doesn't get any waste management. So they were burning all of the plastics. And this was, obviously not great for the kids. It was creating a lot of air pollution. They were inhaling that. It's not something that they wanted to continue. So they needed to come up with a solution. So we love technology. We love that kids can go online and they can find out about what's happening in other parts of the world. So the kids there too went online, did some research to find out where their solutions could come from, and found out there were communities down in South America that were building something called bottle blocks. Now, bottle blocks are taking a used plastic bottle, a 1 liter bottle that would typically go to a landfill or, get burned, and they stuff it with all of the other non-compostable waste. So all of the wrappers, anything that's not going to break down, until it becomes a really hard cement-like block. And then they use that to build. And so they've been using the bottle blocks to build an eco-center on their farm. They've been teaching other members of the community how to build with these bottle blocks so that it actually becomes a real piece of sort of green building premise. And again, it's a solution-oriented, it's youth-directed and youth-initiated. And that's really where we get excited, because I tell you what, y'all, they have so much better ideas than we do. We just had a gala back in December where we were fortunate enough to be able to give awards to Sir Richard Branson and President Jimmy Carter for their work in the environment. And every year that we have the gala, we do a competition with an online platform called Rocket 21, where kids submit their best ideas for environmental solution, and then the winning 4 with their parents get to come to the gala. So this year we had this 4th grader who had just been studying the baleen whale, right, the blue whale. So they have that really interesting screen-like tooth structure that combs the water for plankton. Yeah. Well, right after he had learned about that, he learned also about the 5 gyres and all of the plastic pollution that we have out in the oceans. And the fact that it's not like these big floating pieces of plastic that we can go pick up, right? But it's that they've turned into these little balls of plastic. And they're nearly impossible to collect. So everybody's like, well, why don't you go clean it up? We're like, because we don't know how to, right? So, so this child who had just learned about this tooth structure, his submission to win, and he did, to come to the event was, well, why wouldn't you mimic the baleen whale? Why wouldn't you create a screen-like structure? Because we know it works in the ocean, and collect them that way. So it's this lens, it's this very different perspective that they look through, where they are able to come up with really interesting solutions. And so, obviously we're trying to hook him up with somebody who can test that for him and see if that works. And continuing to sort of head down that pathway and really push this next generation to think about biomimicry in the STEM world, to think about engineering and technology not as a way to overcome nature, but as a way to utilize the models that are out there in order to create solution. So, so that's the next direction that we're heading in terms of funding. We absolutely invite you to become as excited about the work as we are, to become involved with the work, and to understand that we have the capacity to structure these learnings and this development of the next generation of also
green job holders who, have sort of been ignited by this work. So if you have an impact area, if you're particularly interested in renewable energies or in water or in waste or in air, and you want to make sure that the next generation coming up into the job world is interested in pursuing careers in that space, then I invite you to get involved with us so we can help you guys craft a program and invest some dollars in these kids to get them ready. And I thank you. Enjoy your lunch. Thank you.